What would you do if the father who abandoned you suddenly became the talk of the town, his name plastered on a glittering empire, while you were left piecing together the scraps of his absence? My name is Ethan, and this is the story of how my 18th birthday unraveled a truth I never saw coming, a truth that turned my resentment into something I still struggle to name. I grew up in a small apartment on the edge of Chicago, where the walls were thin and the winters were brutal. Mom worked double shifts at the diner, her hands cracked from washing dishes, her smile fading with every bill she couldn't pay. Dad? He was a ghost. Left when I was 6, promising to send money that never came. Child support was a myth, a court order he dodged like a shadow slipping through cracks. Mom never badmouthed him, but her silence screamed louder than words. I learned early that love could be a one-way street, and I built walls around my heart to keep his absence from breaking me. By 17, I was working weekends at a hardware store, saving for college, dreaming of a life where I wouldn't have to check the price of milk. I didn't hate Dad, not exactly. Hate takes energy, and I was too busy surviving. But when I saw his name Richard Halley on a billboard downtown, my world tilted. It was a week before my 18th birthday. The billboard advertised Hale Luxe, a high-end jewelry brand launching with a flagship store in the heart of the city. The man in the sleek suit, smiling confidently, was unmistakably him. Older, grayer, but those sharp blue eyes were the same ones I saw in the mirror every day. Overnight, my deadbeat dad was a mogul. The internet buzzed with stories of his meteoric rise, but not one mentioned where he'd been for 12 years. I couldn't breathe. How does someone go from nothing to that? Mom didn't know either. When I showed her the billboard photo on my phone, her face went pale, then hard. He always had big ideas, she said, voice tight. Never followed through. But this time, he had. And I needed to know why. The day I turned 18, I took a bus to the Magnificent Mile. The Hale Luxe store was a cathedral of glass and gold, all polished surfaces and soft lighting. I stood outside, my reflection a smudge against the gleaming windows, feeling like I didn't belong. I wasn't there to beg or accuse. I just wanted answers. Why now? Why not us? I pushed through the heavy doors, heart pounding. Inside, everything sparkled: diamond necklaces, emerald rings, watches that cost more than Mom's car. A woman in a tailored blazer approached, her smile professional. Welcome to Hale Luxe. Can I assist you? I mumbled something about wanting to see Richard Hale. Her smile faltered. Mr. Hale doesn't take walk-ins, she said, eyeing my scuffed sneakers. I was about to leave when a voice cut through the air. Ethan? I turned, and there he was. Dad. Taller than I remembered, dressed in a suit that screamed money. His face softened, like he'd been expecting me. Let's talk, he said, guiding me to a back office. My stomach churned. This wasn't the reunion I'd imagined. The office was sleek, minimalist, with a view of the city skyline. Dad sat across from me, hands folded. I know you have questions, he said. I owe you that much. His voice was steady, but there was something in his eyes: guilt, maybe, or fear. I didn't care. I asked the only question that mattered: where were you? He sighed, leaning back. I was lost, Ethan. After I left, I hit rock bottom. Bad investments, worse decisions. I couldn't face you or your mom, not when I had nothing to give. He paused, rubbing his jaw. But I never stopped thinking about you. I laughed, bitter. Thinking doesn't pay bills. He flinched, and I pressed on. You couldn't send $1, but you built this? How? That's when the twist came, the kind that makes you question everything. The office door opened, and a woman walked in mid-40s, sharp features, dressed like she owned the place. Ethan, this is Clara, Dad said. My business partner. Clara's eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a jolt. She wasn't just a partner. There was history there, something unspoken. Dad continued, Clara pulled me out of the hole I was in. She believed in me when I didn't. Clara spoke, her voice calm but commanding. Your father had a gift for design, Ethan. He just needed someone to help him focus it. She gestured to a sketch on the desk, a delicate necklace, the kind Mom could never afford. These are his. Every piece in this store. I didn't know what to feel. Pride? Anger? Clara was the wild card, the reason Dad's life had turned around. But why hadn't he reached out? Why build an empire and leave us in the dust? Clara seemed to sense my confusion. She sat down, her gaze steady. Your father wanted to come back when he was whole again. He thought you deserved better than a broken man. Whole? I snapped. You think this, I waved at the opulent office, makes you whole? Mom worked herself to death for me, and you were what? Sketching jewelry? Dad's face crumpled. I was ashamed, Ethan. I thought if I could build something big enough, I could make it right. I was going to reach out after the launch. I swear. Clara leaned forward. He's telling the truth. He's been funding a trust for you, set to release today your 18th birthday. She slid a folder across the desk. I opened it, hands shaking. Inside was a document detailing a trust fund, enough to cover college, maybe more. My name was on it, dated years ago. I wanted to throw it back in their faces. Money didn't erase 12 years of silence. But something stopped me. Clara's eyes, maybe, or the way Dad's hands trembled. They weren't excuses, but they were human. Flawed, messy, human. I left the store that day with the folder and no promises. I didn't forgive him, not yet. But I started to see him differently. Not as a villain, but as a man who'd run from his failures and was trying, in his flawed way, to make amends. Mom and I talked that night, and she cried when she saw the trust fund. Not for the money, but for what it meant that Dad hadn't forgotten me entirely. Months later, I started college, paid for by the trust. I didn't speak to Dad much, but we exchanged letters. Short ones, cautious. Clara sent me a necklace design once, one Dad made with my initials woven into the pattern. I didn't wear it, but I kept it. The story doesn't end with a neat bow. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. But I learned something from Dad's absence and his sudden, glittering return. People can change, even if it's late, even if it's messy. And sometimes, the hardest thing isn't letting go of anger, it's letting someone back in. I'm still figuring out how to do that. Maybe one day, I'll walk into Hale Lux not as a stranger, but as a son.